ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି କି ଲେଖାଟା ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି
ପଚାରିବି
ଚାଲିଲା ତ
ମତେ ବି ଲାଗୁଛି ଚାଲିଲା ଭଳିଆ
ଦେଖଉନ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରିମିଂଟା ଦେଖଉନ ତମେ ସେଠି ଦେଖିବ ଚାଲିଛି
ଏଇଟା କ'ଣ ଏଇଟା ସେଇଟା ଟି
ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ଆସୁଛି ନା ଦେଖ
ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ଆସୁଛି
ହଁ ସେଇଟା ଆସୁଛି ଏଇଟା ଦେଖ ସେଇଟା ବନ୍ଦ କର ସେଇଟା ବନ୍ଦ କର ଖାଲି ଡବଲ ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ଯେମିତି ଦେଉଛନ୍ତି ତାକୁ ଆଡ଼ଜଷ୍ଟ କଲା ପରେ ସିଙ୍ଗଲ ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ଏଇଗୁଡ଼ା କରିବ କଥା ସ୍ମୃତି ନା ଆମେ ଦୌଡ଼ିକି କରିବୁ ଆରେ ଭାଇ ଆଡ଼ଭର୍ଟାଇଜ ଏଇଟା कार्ड चेंज हो कार्ड चेंज कर दो ମୁଁ ଜାଣିଲି ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ବଡ଼ ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ନ ବଡ଼
ଏବେ ଆମ ଭଏସଟା କ'ଣ ଅଛି କାର୍ଡ଼ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିବୁ କାର୍ଡ଼ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିବୁ
कार्ड चेंज कर दो
ଏବେ ଆସୁଛି ଆମ ଭଏସଟା କ'ଣ ଯାଉଛି କୋଉଠୁ ମିଳୁଛି ଆମ ଭଏସଟା ସେ ଭାଷା ହିଁ ପଳେଇଛି ମତେ ଲାଗୁଛି
ଭାଷାଟା ଆମ କଥା
ଭାଷା ତ କହିଛି ହଁ ଡେସ୍କଟପ୍ ଅଡ଼ିଓଟା ଦେଲୁ ସେ ଡେସ୍କଟପ୍ ଅଡ଼ିଓ ବନ୍ଦ ହେଉଛି ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ
Next, our vision meets the global reality because the next session brings together some of the leaders I told you about at the start, the leaders in finance, in technology, in policy, and they will be examining how AI and other frontier technologies are reshaping jobs and, of course, growth in the globe today. And, of course, India playing a central role in all of that. Now, this session... finance, in technology, in policy, and they will be examining how AI and other frontier technologies are reshaping jobs in the globe today and are playing a central role in
Good morning, everyone.
Our vision meets the global
To Odisha, and I have to say, having been born and spent quite a bit of my early life in India, I have never been to Odisha, and so it's truly an honor to be here and have the opportunity to moderate this panel at the Black Swan Summit in India. And as Sharonjeet said, I think this is a timely and important conversation. Mr. Sanjeev Bajaj, Chairman and Managing Director of Bajaj FinServ. Please, all right, let's get started. Sanjeev, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. Everyone's talking about AI and its impact across various sectors. And of course, it's also critical to India and India's future. And the country will soon host the AI Impact Summit. How do you think AI gives India a structural advantage in fintech and insuretech? And does it level the playing field for India? Or does it tilt it the other way? And maybe the last piece with that, where should India double down?
Well, Sachin, first, it's great to be here with everybody, and thank you for that great introduction, but I thought this was going to be a panel of one, you know. I started getting worried over there. But I'm just joking. So, you know, when you look at innovation and disruption in our world over the last 200 years, till recently, a lot of it was determined by where you were born, access to capital, access to land, because these were some of the traditional levers, and that's why you saw a lot of the innovation happening in the West. It industrialized before countries like India. But what the digital world does is changes this dramatically. Geography, where you were born, access to large amounts of capital, that's how the large multinational conglomerates got created, is no longer enough to be able to succeed, because those barriers get broken in the digital world. Now, coming to India, India has this unique advantage where over the last nearly 20 years, the Indian government has driven digital public infrastructure as a public good. So when you look at the basic foundation of digital ID, digital bank accounts, digital payments, digital KYC, and top of that, the way various businesses have been built, not just financial services, but if you go outside over here, you want to buy 2 bananas from the hand cart, the guy is going to show you a QR code. You just scan, pay, and you're done. You don't have to worry about your bank account, your wallet, your credit card. This scalable, secure architecture that has been running over the last 20 years, that is today processing over 650 million digital payments every day, more than the rest of the world put together, is what sets us apart, because it's a great starting point. In addition, when you think about the largest, probably maybe the second largest STEM educated youth in the world, the second largest middle class in the world at 500 million, bigger than most countries' population, and the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, over 200,000 registered startups with the government's DPIIT. All this put together is a heady combination for setting us apart. Now it's really up to all of us over here and outside to use this opportunity where we are already ahead of the starting line, but it's a marathon, it's not a 100-meter dash, to see that we stay ahead.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Few things there that really stood out for me. One is the investment in the digital infrastructure and how it enables not only access, but ultimately it's an equalizer and gives everyone equal opportunity and equal potential, which, as you said, up until recently wasn't something that was possible. Maybe we've talked a bit there about the good that it can do. There's obviously the disruptive factor as well. And Ravi, maybe moving over to you and building on Sanjeev's comment, Singapore's Skills Future program has inspired many countries, including here in India, and it's been a very unique approach. But as you know, India and Singapore are structurally, obviously, very different. And in particular in India, the demographics are strikingly different. What policies, in your view, Ravi, need to be relooked at to drive reskilling, upskilling, and encourage a more entrepreneurial spirit and embrace the disruption in a more positive way?
Thank you, Sachin. And I think that question gets to the heart of what we are all gathered here for, which is not technology or innovation for its own sake, but how it translates into jobs, into livelihoods, and inclusion. Now, Skills Future is a program that Singapore runs, and quite obviously that's not going to be replicable in every detail in other places, right? I think what's more important, behind the scheme designs and behind the policy features are the underlying mindset shifts and philosophies that we are trying to achieve, and by no means have succeeded yet. It's still work in progress. And I think that is what we need in many parts of the world, where, again, the same challenges Singapore faces and India faces, where technology has, the constant challenge of translating technology into jobs. The first big shift we need to make is to shift to a truly lifelong learning paradigm and architecture. We are caught in a 800-year-old education architecture and a job architecture which separates the two. Skills Future and any variations of that you may want to try here have to break that down. That learning in school must incorporate what's going on in the workplace. And what's going on in the workplace must incorporate continuous going back to learning. And this model of lifelong learning is what we're trying to achieve through Skills Future. And this means several things. First, we need to reimagine apprenticeships and internships. These must become vital components of the education system. So you break down this artificial barrier and you have porosity. That even as you're going towards your diploma or your degree or your certificate, you are actually notching up apprenticeship, internship, work experiences. And the minute you start work, your learning doesn't end. In fact, your learning accelerates. And I think we need a stackable structure that is stackable credentials, embed modular, portable learning nuggets throughout the work life, continuously going back to school or some other equivalent, so they are continually learning. I think that is the paradigm shift that any policy or shift should try to achieve, the concept of lifelong learning. I would just add one more, and this is particularly relevant to large countries like India, which is to hardwire inclusion into every effort. Every rupee that is spent on skills should embed that. Because, let's face it, there are disadvantaged segments in society. So any scheme that is run is not going to provide equal opportunities for all, even if they are well-intended. And so explicit targets and even differentiated levels of support for women, for rural youth who do not have the social capital and exposure of cities, and those in the informal economy, to give them also a ladder into this. I think this is to ensure that reskilling and support for learning reaches those who are least likely to benefit from just market forces alone, which are absolutely essential, but not enough. Finally, I think, whenever we ask, how does any of this work across India? Don't think India. Think states. Think cities. Think towns. Because that's how Singapore did it. That's how did America get to where it is? How did Germany get to where it is? Not because there was some grand plan in Washington, D.C. or Berlin. It is what's happening in every province, every state, city by city. People experimented. So think of these as living laboratories where experiments are done, the good experiments get copied by others, and that's how change takes place across the whole country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. There's so much there that resonated. I think this point about inclusion and particularly bringing more women into the workforce is a powerful point, not just for India, but as we think about Asia. This idea of lifelong learning, and that learning doesn't end when you graduate university, and it's just really the first step. And then most powerfully, and I think India in many ways embodies this, thinking local and creating that local competitive spirit amongst governments, amongst towns, amongst states. I think it's quite a powerful idea and concept there. Michael, if I could ask you to just maybe build on some of the comments before we transition to the next topic. Given what you and Axion do and how you've done it across other emerging markets, I'd welcome your thoughts on what Ravi said about how we think about skilling for the future and also how fintech and insuretech can play a role in that.
So I'm delighted to be here, and I run Axion, which is a global nonprofit dedicated to creating a fair and inclusive world. We work all around the world. We're a very active early investor in fintechs for inclusion. We have a whole advisory arm that works with banks and microfinance institutions to help digitally transform them. We have a think tank. We invest all over the world. And when I think about what truly sets India apart, the India stack is so remarkable. And when you dig through and try to understand how did that happen, it is such a great combination of true vision, the resources, both intellectual and financial, the design, political will extended over a long period of time, excellent execution and iteration. There's a constant improvement cycle. I remember when Nandan Nilekani originally started talking about Aadhaar and bringing biometric IDs to 1.4 billion people. And let's just say the notion was greeted with great skepticism. And then he did it. And that event was amazing all around the world. People said, wow, if you can do that. And then it didn't stop there. That was really just the beginning of everything from UPI to eKYC to the whole stack has been transformational. And it is working. The data is extraordinary. In 2005, only a quarter of the Indian population had access to financial services. Today, that is 90%. In addition, there was a 20% gender gap, and today that is 0%. And more than that, I think it sets up, and it's the theme of this conversation, India has gone from being data poor to data rich. UPI not only is enormous in dollars, but in transactions, but UPI processes half of all of the world's transactions. Half of all of the world's transactions are happening here, and that is remarkable, and it is actually quite recent. And why is that important? Because data, sometimes we forget this, but data by its nature is inclusive. People haven't been left out because they're bad credits, they've been left out because they're invisible. And what we're living through, and India is truly a global leader, is making the invisible visible. And so that economic progress, hopefully with the right policies, hopefully we will do this in an inclusive way. That is what we're trying to do, and it's so exciting to see it happening here.
There's so much again in what you said, but I think this point about data drives inclusion is quite powerful. So thank you for your comments. Maybe we can transition to our sort of next topic around how markets create jobs and platforms for credit and policy. And Doug, if I could maybe pivot to you. Alipay Plus connects more than 1.8 billion people and accounts across 40 different payment partners in more than 100 markets. You've also launched something called Gen AI Cockpit, positioning super apps like Dana, Gcash, TrueMoney, and reduced AirAsia's FX costs quite substantially with something called Falcon AI. When you design products like Alipay and your new AI service, Gen AI Cockpit, how do you decide what value stays with the user or the small business versus what is captured by your platform? And what principles guide the choices you make so that you create a win-win outcome with what you're doing?
Well, thanks for that, Sachin. Let me, I'll put this in context because I want to talk about AI and its impact on commerce. And I travel around the world basically building mobile payment systems with partners. And I actually always cite India as one country at the top of the heap in terms of what has been done here with the things that Sanjeev introduced of the digital ID and digital payment, and now moving to digital commerce, in which, Michael, you exemplified in terms of your talk and how that really is a foundation for development. And so there's a huge opportunity here, I can say as someone who sees different countries around the world. I would say that that is actually happening in many countries around the world. So across Southeast Asia, your neighbor to the east, there are national QR systems now being introduced in every single country. And increasingly, those are interoperable. And so the world is opening up to this. And on top of that, you have this incredible development of AI, which is coming in to reshape global commerce. And so it's an exciting opportunity here, but it's also very much a challenging one. And what I would say is that, how do we do that? How do we think about the development? You start with the digital infrastructure, which you have here in India and in many countries around the world. And then you need players like what we're trying to introduce with our partners that have some fundamental philosophy to enable the local people and businesses to adopt AI on top of their digital infrastructure. And we do that by doing a few things. Number one, we design products from the beginning that people can understand on the street, in their homes, and understand the power of the AI solution for them. So it has to be simple through certain steps. Secondly, we believe in bringing global technology to local economies. And so a lot of the things that were talked about this morning here in Odisha are things that can happen by bringing global technology further in. And there's going to be a huge influx of AI technology. And then you need to be collaborative. You can't have your own solution. Everything has to work together. And so those are the philosophies we use. And what's happening now through things like our Alipay Plus solution, we're connecting 40 mobile wallets around the world to be able to transact in different countries everywhere. And on top of that, to use AI tools. So the local merchant needs to be able to build an AI-driven store in 10 minutes. The local merchant needs to be able to accept wallets from around the world to be able to pay. The local merchant needs to understand then how to manage their finances, to get digital loans, and to build their business. And that's how you actually promote the fundamental economic development on the ground, which is going to be coming at us in a great new way with AI, but in one that needs to be enabled.
Doug, thanks. I think you really highlighted some of the points that were brought out on the panel around digital becoming an equalizer and providing access, and how digital tools really enable that merchant to access customers and take payments that they couldn't otherwise take, and the whole idea of collaboration in a much bigger way. Really fantastic comments. Maybe then transitioning, I think, is a perfect opportunity to bring Sanjeev back into the conversation. Here, you're aiming to grow Bajaj FinServ to more than 200 million active customers. And at the same time, India is building a unified lending interface to make it easier for smaller merchants to get credit. What kind of partnerships are needed to unlock the smaller merchant opportunity, if you will, at true scale, and especially for the more informal economy to become more connected into the formal economy?
I think this is a very important question, Sachin, because 30% of our GDP is driven by small business, by MSMEs, right? And yet, if you look at the formal credit that is available to them, is just to a fraction of MSMEs. So there's clearly an arbitrage over there between demand and supply. Now, you talked about the United Lending Interface, and just to the audience over here, I must say that over the last 20 years, between the government and private sector, how our digital infrastructure has evolved is from the foundation of the India digital stack. The government now is creating public platform protocols as public goods. So for example, the United Lending Interface is an interface not controlled by Amazon or Flipkart or XYZ, which would charge you 5, 10, 15, 20% for use, but it is free to use. But as private sector, you can build your business on it and make money. When you look at account aggregator, it releases bank account statements of individuals if they want to 100 lenders instead of it being restricted to their 3 bank accounts. And this is all done digitally through one text message. So suddenly, as a borrower, I'm no longer dependent just on my bank. I can use my data, my information of my financial statements to everybody around. For working capital credit for MSMEs, there's another platform called OCEN. A marketplace like Amazon is ONDC. So there are multiple such, I would say, facilitative initiatives that have been created as public goods. Now coming to the MSME question of yours, I would say there are 3 areas that we need to work on: awareness, access, and execution. To a lot of MSMEs, and you go down to small business, they don't know how to access these platforms. They don't know how to use the power of data. How can we, through training, through the right model, so we have a Data Privacy and Access Act now, DPDP, how do we see that that actually supports them rather than inhibits their use of data for access? Because most of them are not literate from a data sense. So I think awareness is very important. Access, we've talked about a bunch of these basic platforms, but there are more involved platforms. For example, we ourselves run one of the largest financial services marketplaces in the country with over 100 partners there. We have about 20-25 million loan requests annually on that platform. Small fraction of what AND does, but we are growing as well. But these are more involved platforms. We have a health aggregation platform that aggregates 15,000 hospitals, 150,000 doctor clinics in 150 cities around the country and provides value-added health services. So there will always be the more basic stuff and the more involved stuff for those people that need, but access becomes important. And then execution. How do we ensure that we make our services available easily and at low cost to the MSME or the small business population? Because what we have seen and what we need to understand about India is, while India has many Indias, as Ravi said, every state, every city, every town is different, we are still a 2,700 per capita economy, growing every year, but we are still there. If you get the right ticket size or the right cost per unit right, we are an infinite growth economy, but you have to get that right.
I think what you've said is very powerful around the 3 points: awareness, access, and execution to get the smaller merchants into the economy. In your mind, is that an opportunity to create more jobs? Because in many ways, as you said, the small merchant isn't literate enough to avail themselves to this, and so they need help. And so is there a win-win proposition here when we think about how technology can actually drive job growth and not just growth?
So you know, at every stage, there are new job opportunities that are getting created. Awareness, a lot of it can be digital. Therein lies entrepreneurship opportunity. Access, around that as well. And even in terms of execution. So for example, across our lending and financial services companies, if, as I mentioned earlier, the greater the ease with which we can make loans and insurance products available, the greater the chance for entrepreneurs to build their businesses or expand their businesses, start new ones, and that then leads to job creation as well.
Yeah. Doug, maybe if I could come back to you to maybe comment on this. Given the experience and exposure you've had with AND across multiple markets in this, have you seen similar trends in other markets that reinforce what we're seeing here and what Sanjeev just shared?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do see a big focus on SMEs around the world as the engine of growth. And what you need to do, kind of combining that with AI theme, because this is transforming the world, is we need to give them the tools to make this happen in a practical and understandable way for them. 3 things that you have to do that. Number 1, you have to have a device or system that actually works for them, that they can understand. And we just introduced a thing called EPOS 360, which is a simple terminal. You can load your inventory, you can connect with payment, you can do everything there in a simple way. And so we say to our salespeople, if you can't explain it in 10 to 15 minutes, it's going to fail. So make it happen. Secondly, you've got to give these merchants the tools that are being introduced every month by new AI solutions. And this is a challenge. I mean, all these large language models are changing every month or two. You can see the stock market under massive convolutions with these things happening. What we're trying to do is through our Gen AI cockpit, give them immediately those tools. Here's a new thing that you can do to identify customer needs. Here's a new digital way to accept digital coupons. And so help them to understand that. And then it comes down to the third element, which is the people's understanding themselves. And this goes to Ravi's comment about lifelong learning, which I couldn't agree with more. I mean, the education system of today has to be completely revolutionized. I mean, hardly anybody today had AI in school in any way. And now it's going to be central to everything that you're doing. And so programs, like we have a program called 10 by 1000. We train 10,000 people every year to understand the new sources of technology and put that in a practical way. Bring people together who are in business, talk about how it's implemented.
The cost of how we can reach and serve and bring financial services to the people who've been left out.
You know, I like the words you used here, the frugal innovation, the rapid iteration, and how the environment really shapes the entrepreneurial spirit here in a very unique way. Michael, thank you for your comments. Maybe, Ravi, then coming back to you, you've championed Singapore's fintech sector overall in the Singapore FinTech Festival in particular, ESG and climate finance. What policy tools, in your mind and experience, enable job creation? And how can policy frameworks be developed or incentivized to really drive job growth and not just growth?
Yeah. So maybe I'll mention about 3 or 4 of them. First, from a policy perspective, think interoperability, not just innovation. To really create value, create jobs, and create revenues, you need to ensure that innovation is interoperable. Second, think tasks, not jobs. I'll come to that in a second. Third, think blended finance. Fourth, how do you get universities, colleges, polytechnics to work with employers, firms, and businesses? The first, interoperability. Now, you know, Sanjeev, Mike, and Doug have all spoken about India's UPI. UPI stands for Unified Payment Interface. The payment part is not the critical one. Sending money, you know, paying using this is not rocket science. That's not possible because you have different relationships with different insurance companies, banks, asset managers, and your stock portfolio, not to mention your taxes and your pensions. How do you bring all that together? Open banking is putting power in the hands of the individual to be able to aggregate it. Why did it not succeed? Because the rails to make it happen were not built. There were no APIs, application programming interfaces, that made that possible. There was no policy direction to make that possible. And in Singapore, we tried to do that. We've put APIs to connect so that at the touch of a few buttons with consent architecture, I can bring my various bank accounts, my insurance policies onto one page for comprehensive financial advice. We need to make innovation interoperable. Left to the market, it weren't. What you'll have are digital islands that do not talk to one another. You need to build those bridges, and that's policy. Second, think tasks, not jobs. We keep asking, what's technology going to do to jobs? Let's ask, what's technology going to do to tasks? Technology is definitely going to create some jobs, and it's going to definitely destroy some jobs. But the vast majority of jobs, I suspect, are going to be changed. And a job is merely a collection of a few tasks. So when we did Skills Future, we asked ourselves, how is digital technology going to change banking jobs? And we looked at 200 different job roles, and for each of them, we interviewed and talked to the bosses, talked to the incumbents, talked to the teammates to see what are the tasks in each of those jobs. And then we asked, with digital technology advancing in 5 years' time, how are those tasks going to be changed? If a job has more than 80% of tasks going to be made obsolete, that job is in danger. Some jobs only 20%, not much to do for those jobs. For a vast majority of jobs, 50% of your tasks will get changed, which means you need to retrain in order to do that job well. What are the tasks that are going to be changed? Set them aside. What are the new tasks that are going to emerge? Start learning for those, and you keep your job. Bank tellers, a group that we were very concerned about, because there are a large number of bank tellers in Singapore as it is in many countries. How many of us, when was the last time you went into a bank branch to do banking? You don't need to. And with a younger generation, that's going to be an obsolete thing. My kids have gone to a bank only once to open the account because they wanted to see the face. They've not stepped into a bank since. So what are bank tellers going to do? So you have to split up the jobs, how the job's going to change, and then do this. Blended finance, very quickly, anything that governments do by way of financial support, think not grant, but think incentive and co-investment. Invest with the private sector having skin in the game so that there is alignment of interests and incentives. And finally, get universities and colleges and ITs, polytechnics to talk to employers. This is the most difficult of the four because they speak a very different language. It's like getting chicken and ducks to talk to each other. The education institutions, for good reasons, have their own vocabulary, their philosophy of what needs to be taught. And people in the job market are very impatient. They want skills now. They want the skills for today's jobs. But they also need to pay attention to the capacity to learn, which universities should be focused on. Getting those conversations going, adjusting curriculums to suit the evolving needs of the marketplace, that is probably the most challenging of the four, but I think in many ways the most important. Thank you.
Ravi, that was, there's a lot of rich content there, but the one I'm going to emphasize is getting chicken and ducks talking. I think there is, it's a funny statement in a sense, but it's very powerful in terms of what you're implying there, and I think a fantastic takeaway. I'm being sensitive to time, so I think we're going to move to what is, we'll call our rapid fire round. And I'll run through a series of questions, and we'll just go around the panel through the first couple questions. So the question is, what should your respective institution do to ensure that that growth in the digital economy ultimately leads to growth in jobs as well? And maybe we'll start with Doug on that.
I'd say global to local sharing. And so this is bringing the knowledge that we have from international markets to on the ground level and sharing that with our partners, which we're doing with e-wallets, with SMEs, with other components. It's to Ravi's point of interoperability. And so I think that's something that we can do to help to facilitate this.
Fantastic. Michael?
My whole organization is about doing this in an inclusive way. And most people, micro-entrepreneurs are only micro-entrepreneurs because they have no other choice. By getting them the capital that they need, by getting them the digital tools that they need, they can grow and, as you said, hire more people and start expanding. That is what our work is all about.
Fantastic. Ravi?
Well, I'll repeat what I just said. Think tasks, not jobs. Think what are the tasks of the future, not jobs of the future. A job is merely a collection of tasks.
Fantastic. And Sanjeev?
So being in lending and insurance, our role is to enable. We need to enable and protect. So we need to be the wind beneath the entrepreneur's wings, helping them lift off and do what they do best.
The entrepreneur's wings. I really like that. We'll move to our second rapid fire question. Where do you see the biggest disconnect today between digital growth and real employment outcomes? And who needs to fix it? And perhaps this time we'll start with Sanjeev.
So the biggest disconnect is really the speed of change. When we moved from an aggregated to an industrial society, the speed of change took over 30 years. When we moved from the steam engine to electricity, change happened probably over 10 years. The digital world, with the internet coming in, the start of the internet world, probably took 3-4 years of change. But as Doug mentioned, you're seeing new LLMs every month. The speed of change that AI is driving is literally in months now, which means that a set of jobs where 80% of the tasks will change are going to get obsolete. The next set of jobs, some are coming in early, some will take time. Managing that is a societal need.
Yeah, speed of change. Ravi?
I think the big gap is between education and employment. That's a disconnect that we need to resolve for. We need to move our mindsets away from academic credentials to employable skills, and recognize that it is not certificates that matter, it is the skills content in those certificates. And to recognize that learning is continuous. A prominent person in Singapore once suggested university degrees should have an expiry date. Unfortunately, he was roasted on social media. A lot of students were very angry. We worked so hard to get that university degree. But actually, whether you make it an expiry date or not, that is the truth today. Our university degrees have expired. We are where we are. They got us to a start. But we're where we are today for each of us is because we continually learned. And very little of that, the university certificate mattered. I think we need to internalize this much more actively at the start in the education system.
Being a father of 3 children that have just graduated from university progressively over the last few years, I now fret what you're saying, but you're absolutely right that there should be an expiry on our university degrees, which forces all of us to refresh and rejuvenate. So, Michael, over to you.
Really, Sanjeev made this point. We've seen technologies. There are winners, there are losers, there are jobs that are created, there are industries that are created, there are other industries that are displaced. What's happening now is just the pace is shockingly fast. And I think that it does take government policies to really think about, you can't resist the transition, but you can accelerate and try to make it a little bit more kind and gentle and help people to move from a set of skills to a different set of skills. I think that is, that's easier to say on a panel than it is to actually do in real life.
Thank you, Michael. And Doug, over to you.
I'd say focus on education of the little guy. And what do I mean by the little guy? I think you've seen that happen here in India. Part of the reason that the whole digitization of the country has gone so successfully is it started with Aadhaar, bring the little guys on, then get them to payment, then get them to commerce. And that's what we need to do today, is to focus on education of the individual and the small SME, give them tools where they can learn and learn continuously, and then that will bring them all together. You know, that's what we're about at Ant Financial. That's what we're called Ant, because it's the little guy. And that's, I think if you focus on the little guy, then all the others will come up with them. And so then you can have a much more sustainable economic development.
Fantastic. So our last rapid fire, if you had to choose what matters more for jobs growth, is it infrastructure, is it skills, or is it market access? And you can only pick one. Doug?
Skills, just to my last comment, yeah.
Fantastic. Michael?
Capital. Capital.
Fantastic. And Ravi?
It's hard to choose. I would have chosen skills, but Doug chose it. I'd say markets, because we've not talked very much about it. Think about the demand for the future. If 20 years ago we were surveyed, how many of you would want this? How many of you want to buy this? We would say, what is that thing? Why would I need that? I have a landline at home. I have a landline in the office. I have telephone booths all over the place. Why do I need this? Today, can we live without it? Seeing what's ahead, what is the future demand in a climate change ravaged world, in a AI dominated world, the needs are going to be so different. And if you can see those market needs, then I think you're in good shape for job creation.
And fantastic. Sanjeev, over to you to wrap us up.
Well, I guess we're out of time, so I'm going to put a fourth one to say opportunity. As long as there's opportunity, the rest can be developed.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank the panelists for a very insightful conversation. It was really my pleasure to moderate this panel today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sachin, and our fantastic leaders. What great insights they shared. I hope you're all taking notes on your smartphones. Brilliant. Thank you once again to our amazing leaders and change makers. Sachin, thank you so much for such a great session. Wow. Where we will move on now because we are talking all about AI. But as AI accelerates, what else needs to accelerate? We know skills need to catch up, but how can institutions also catch up with the transformation that we are seeing, the digital disruption that we are seeing with AI? So, to open this next discussion, I would like to invite Professor Take You for his opening remarks. Now, this will be followed, after the professor finishes, with a panel discussion. Once again, a panel discussion with great insights with leaders from government, academia, as well as policy and industry. And that is a discussion that will be moderated by Chris Coxon. So please, everyone, please give a big round of applause to Professor Take You.
Good morning, everybody. I think you have heard from the last panel a couple of things. We look at the speed of change, right? It's unprecedented. We look at the way things have changed. It's not just about Gen AI. We're also going to look at how the maturing of blockchain has created the emergence of stablecoins, tokenized deposits, and eventually tokenization of real-world assets. We're also looking at how the future can be impacted by quantum technology as they go on stream. So what we are saying here is that the education sector, as we say today, the academy will, by the time we teach graduates or undergraduates, by the time they graduate, the technology that they have learned will most likely become obsolete within 3 to 5 years. So how do we actually change that? How do we actually relook at education? How do we create a continuous learning framework for countries to deploy? Right? And again, I say it's not just about AI, but also different types of emerging technologies. I represent the Asian Institute of Digital Finance, which is interestingly formed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore under Mr. Ravi Menon's leadership when he was MD of MAS, where they decided to fund an institute within the National University of Singapore to focus on emerging technologies for financial services. And we look at it from as a bridge, right? We look at how, not being the main university, but as an institute, we can move faster to actually meet the needs of the employers, right? So we are focused on postgraduate training, right? Working with the industry. We are focused on research, applied research, I'll call it, where we actually solve problems for the industry, working with the industry players, the corporates. So every research will end up with a proof of concept, a white paper designed to solve an industry problem, and not for academic purposes alone. So if you look at it, the university's value proposition has always been access to information. We taught students how to answer questions. But in today's world, information is free with Gen AI. And answers are commoditized by algorithms. So that premium has shifted. We are no longer training students to answer questions. We must actually train them to ask the right questions. So we are actually moving from an era where we test memory to an era where we test judgment. If we do not redesign our curricula to prioritize inquiry over information, we are actually preparing our youth for a world that no longer exists. So India stands at a fascinating crossroad to lead this shift. You have the world's most enviable demographic dividend. But to harness that, we must build an infrastructure not just for skilling, but for agility. So I think here we want to discuss three critical pillars. One is the curriculum shift. Like Mr. Ravi Menon has mentioned, how do we move from static curricula to dynamic, stackable credentials that evolve as fast as the algorithms change? We also want to talk about the financial engine, right? How do we use some of our digital finance innovation to democratize access to education? Education cannot be a dead threat, right? It must be an investable asset class. We need models where upskilling is accessible to the many, not just the few. And lastly, the policy framework. How do state governments catalyze this? Right, we are particularly keen to understand and discuss Odisha's emerging potential as a laboratory for innovative institutional changes. A place where policy, industry, and academia can converge to create a responsive skills ecosystem. So we have brought a powerhouse panel representing legislative experience, state policy innovation, financial expertise, and technical education leadership to discuss these mechanisms. So let's begin, and let me invite the panel to come on stage.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be back here in Bhubaneswar. Great to be here with you all. Just as my fellow panelists take their seat, economy. So you can obviously see who I'm joined by the titles on the stage. So we're, given that we've not got a lot of time here, we're going to jump just straight in here. And I want to really get into this point here. The pace of technology is moving incredibly fast. We've heard already today, skills need to adapt, education needs to adapt. And Dr. Patnaik, you've been very vocal about how education needs to change for a very long time now.
That we need to do. So there's a lot more to do, but I think, having said so, we have done quite a lot. First of all, you see in the education system, we have the primary stakeholders as students, teachers, and then at the far end, the employers. So if you look at them, then I think as far as students are concerned, India now has the skilling for AI readiness for school students from 6 to 12, AI, on teaching them AI basics. There is Future Skills Prime, there is Yuva AI for all, and the National AI Strategy. I think many of these are addressing the issue of adoption as well as adaptation at the student level. The curriculum reforms, educational reform framework given in the National Education Policy, the IITs developing courseware, the private sector developing several courseware, that's also happening. Industry collaboration, to some extent, the AI essentials of Google or other tech giants, that's also happening. India has done incredibly well, given the challenge that we have of multiple languages across states and across different regions. So the Bhasini platform, which India has developed, I think is a great platform, I thought, for making sure that there is this inclusion that Mr. Ravi Menon talked about. So the Bhasini platform is there. There is, and for the disadvantaged groups of people, for example, women, for children, for specially able children, there are different training programs. But the real challenge is of technology. But adaptation is the issue. So on the student front, I think we are doing well enough. Now on the teacher's side, the pedagogy, I think we have to do a hell of a lot over there. And that's the point where I think I would think that we need to work on it much more. And it's the most difficult. How do you address pedagogy in STEM courses? How do you address pedagogy in non-STEM courses? Where literature, history, I think these are the things that probably one has to work on the teacher's front, and the technology leading to changes in pedagogy. then different courses, disciplines and interdisciplinary courses requiring different kind of pedagogy. At the same time, research and development, basic research, we can't forget that. How do you treat that? A lot of work probably needs to be done there because that's also a part of education. Currently, I think education and skills, I think going forward, we cannot really now distinguish between education and skills. Anybody who is educated in our terms has to be skilled as well in handling AI. That's my view.
Thank you. So I think, some great points there. So obviously, things are happening. There's a lot more that we need to do and a lot faster, particularly with the evolution of technology in such a way. But you also called out the core and the necessary partnerships. And I think that gives us a nice transition here to Secretary Agrawal. So you're obviously the Higher Education Secretary here in Odisha State. And we've heard a lot already this morning. I think several panelists mentioned these stackable modular credentials that are needed going forward. I think that all sounds great, but what will...
As we all know, in the AI years, the shelf life of any skill course is compressed. Now the world is changing very fast. We have to also upgrade ourselves very frequently. So there is definitely a need of a modular credentials, and it can be only like there are few prerequisites for any such modular credentials to be having the same value as of a traditional degree. The first thing is like such modular courses are to be accepted by the user. Like user must trust the industry. So whatever skill courses. It is as per the National Credit Framework also. And in Odisha also, we have given due credits for... The third most important thing is like whenever such modular courses are designed, definitely it must have that quality and a strong assessment and certification process. Then only it will be accepted similar to the traditional degree. And as we know, like when the questions of the utility of the traditional degree certificates are questioned now, we have to shift to a system where continuous learning through these modular courses are necessary. And I must say, as part of the state government, we are very much on the job, and we are developing such courses and also giving due credits.
So thank you. That's I want to just follow up on that a little bit, because you obviously mentioned the role of the state government, and we know that that's going to be really, really important in terms of driving that shift. So as the state government, how are you aligning both the higher education side of things, the skills development, and also industry demands? How are you coordinating all of that to really ensure that this shift is happening and happening quickly?
See, like it's about when we talk of skill and industry requirements, definitely when we think in the perspective of bureaucracy and all, particularly the government, then the higher education is looked after by one department, skill is looked after by another department, industries are looked after by different departments, industries and MSME departments. But as far as Odisha is concerned, we believe in a philosophy of Team Odisha. We all believe in the whole of the government approach in silos. They all work jointly and collaboratively. And the latest example of such collaboration is yesterday's event, when more than around 200 students graduated for a certificate course on fintech through National University of Singapore, where 2 different departments, they joined hands, and within a shortest possible time, from planning till execution, it took only less than 6 months' time. So this is just an example, but other than that, when we talk of collaboration and convergence, so we had a structured framework also. At the state level, obviously, like at the time of planning and execution of the programs, all the departments sit together, and under the chairmanship of Development Commissioner, we have a committee where we coordinate our policies, planning, and actions. Similarly, at the university level, we have ensured that the industries and the skills are integral part of their policy and decision making. Now, in skill development department is assisting to us in a large extent. So there is another convergence, and we see, not only that, we are also working on collaboration and convergence between multi-stakeholders. We are also working on developing a platform where for internship for students, where the government, the higher education institutions, and also private industries will be treated equally, and students can have internship in either of the places. And the objective is to acquire the rightful skill.
Significantly in that amount of time. So when we look at the academia side of things, how are you redesigning for that lifelong learning? So I'm really interested in touching on both, one, for students and that side of things. But obviously, I think, as everyone in this room will know, that behavioral change, it's not just the technology and it's not just the curriculum changing, but it's also, particularly when it comes to university, the faculty that's teaching. So how are you redesigning, and also how are you really incentivizing that change?
Yeah. First, I thank the organizers for inviting me to this panel discussion. Now, it just so happens that I am a product of IIT system. I passed out, I did a BTech from IIT Madras in 1983. So it is a coincidence that today I am at the helm of IIT Bhubaneswar, which is about 17 years old, which was the same age at which I joined IIT Madras. So IIT Madras, when I joined, it was 17-year-old. So I can clearly see the difference. 40 years. In 40 years, how is a 17-year-old IIT Madras 40 years ago different from, or IIT Bhubaneswar, 17-year-old today, different from 17-year-old IIT Madras? So I see two important changes. Back then, the IITs, the faculty used to be monitored, and for promotion, they had to do good teaching and research. These were the only two parameters. But today, a faculty in IIT Bhubaneswar, for example, and in all other IITs, additionally, industry-academia collaboration and entrepreneurship development. These are the two major additions to the IIT vision. So now let me come to the point that if you want to change the learner, you must change the trainer and the teacher. So what are we doing for that? Now we have introduced a concept called teaching portfolio, where we tell all the teachers what are the ideal things in teaching learning that the teacher should be doing, and they must document all those things in a teaching portfolio for every course that they teach. So by the end of the semester, every teacher uploads a portfolio which is equivalent to a research paper. Supposing you ask a person, what research have you done? The person will produce some research papers and say, you read this, what research have you done? Now for teaching, there was no such thing. So this is something unique we have done in IIT Bhubaneswar, that every teacher uploads a teaching document. So what does it contain? For example, today the teaching document component contains an item where the teacher has to indicate how the teacher has used AI to improve students' learning. This is a thing that every teacher has to enter. How is he using AI to improve learning? Now, in order to aid the teacher in doing it, we also plan to conduct sessions on how AI can be used to improve pedagogy. So, one of the things that we have done is to introduce courses like Introduction to Research and Entrepreneurship, where the focus is not on methodology, but on skills. So, for example, one of the important skills for lifelong learning is reading. Now, not many students are used to reading. Their reading skills and reading habits are very poor. Now, today, in a fast-changing world, if a person has to change, then a person must have good reading skills and habits. So that is one of the things we are focusing, where a course tells the student that the reading skill is very important and gives assignments on the kind of material a person must read to keep abreast with the change. And then the person is evaluated on his reading and presentation skills. Another thing that we are doing to keep up with the change is the concept of minor stream. Now, if you take a bachelor's program, there are certain core elements which may not change over a long period of time. And those have to be imparted even though the world is changing. However, there is a basket of 3 or 4 courses which can change with time. And this is what is called a minor stream. So a student gets a degree, let us say a student getting a degree in electrical engineering major will also get a minor degree, let us say in AI or in innovation or in product development and so on. So apart from that, another thing is certificate courses, which are designed in collaboration. For example, in the area of semiconductors, we have introduced a certification course, a 1-year course in semiconductor technology and chip design. Similarly, we are going to introduce a course in AI in medicine. Now, semiconductor technology and chip design course is a collaboration between industry and academia. So we have professors and people from industry together teaching this course in hybrid mode, where the students come physically from all over India. There is an online teaching component and there is a physical component where the students have to come and do experiments and also write the exam in person. Similarly, for AI in medicine, we have teamed up with All India Institute of Medical Science. So, collaborative activity and short courses which are in keeping with the times. This is another important element of continuous learning. Apart from that, some of the other things that I would like to point out is also there has to be a change, there is to be research on AI, let us say. For instance, some days back, I tried this using an accessible AI tool that was available. I just put in the question that why is the air quality of a particular city A much better than a particular city B, whereas I knew that the air quality of that city is actually poor. But I wanted to get the reason out of AI, and I wanted to check whether the AI tells me that no, you're wrong, the air quality of city A is actually worse. But the AI tool that was accessible didn't do that. It gave me reasons why the air quality of city A might be better than that of B. So the point is, we have to do research so that the accessible AI tools are such that the person who is using the tool can get the accurate answer without having to ask questions in multiple ways or prompt in multiple ways. In other words, the level of intelligence of the user should be, the AI model should allow a person with average intelligence to use the AI tool. Only then we can say it is accessible. If the person who is using the AI tool has to be intelligent in designing the questions, so then really the AI tool is not that useful.
If I may, I think you're really touching on an interesting point here, which is the trust point, right?
Right.
And I think, I think going forward, both trust and inclusion in any transformation are key, right? So I think what I'd like to explore a little bit more in the next few minutes is really how, as those continuous learning structures are built and continue to evolve, how do we make sure that MSMEs, and particularly, people in rural areas, underserved people more broadly. We see in our work at Action that with any digital transformation in financial services, you've got to be very, very intentional in the way that you build products, but also roll out the products to ensure that people are well equipped to be able to adopt them. And that's both customers, but also the institutions themselves. But what I'm really interested in exploring with the panel, and maybe Dr. Patnaik, I can come to you here, how do we really ensure that we're getting that broader reach, that it's not there's a group of people that are left behind and those that are already connected are continuing to evolve?
Thank you so much. But as you said, as you mentioned, I think that's the key challenge in this entire transformation that we are talking about. The digital divide amongst rural and urban India, in some states, it could be very high, and in some states it could be very less. But around 25% of rural India still doesn't have smartphones, doesn't probably have a very reliable access to internet. High-speed internet is something even more difficult. So I think that part of the infrastructure, government is, of course, seized of this matter. There is a program for expanding it as quickly as possible. But I want to make the point that in India, even with this kind of a situation, we have seen the adoption rate of our digital public infrastructure, the payment systems, the lending systems. So adoption is, I think, not really the problem in this country. The problem is adaptation. The adaptation issue can actually be handled, handling it is going to be very difficult given this situation, because the rollout is going to take a lot of time. As the professor was speaking about, training the teachers and training the trainers and training the students. But with every set of data or a pool of data, the model itself is improving, or it's becoming better. And once it is changing itself, to adapt that particular changed situation with the trainers and with the students is even more difficult. Now, I think that has to be addressed, which is I think India is well poised. We are going in that direction. I think it is fast enough. Within the next 2-3 years, we should be able to solve this issue. The generation of AI models, I think there's no need for everyone to do that. The idea is that only those being immersive technologies along with AI for training doctors and for their junior doctors. In such a situation, how do you actually adapt and adapt quickly for both the professors as well as the students? So to your question as to the rollout to the disadvantaged people, India is already grappling with the matter, as I mentioned earlier, that for specially abled students, there is a separate program. There's a separate program going on for tribal areas. There's a separate program going on for people who are not speaking English language. As I said, India is a multilingual country in several ways. So there is the Bhasini software. So the platforms and the infrastructures are getting developed. My worry is how it will go very quickly, as I said once again, to the trainers. I think the trainees are ready to adopt. The trainers, my so many years of experience in public administration, I think that the difficulty would be with the trainers. So it's a good thing if the industry collaboration is already taking place. I think unless co-creation of these curriculum, co-adoption also takes place, the change which will be happening on a regular basis, almost on a weekly basis, where data gets improved and the model starts improving, the transfer will not take place to the trainer and subsequently to the trainee.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think that evolution piece is really key, and I think particularly the platforms that you mentioned, UPI, the digital, the account aggregators, digital lending platforms that you have in India, we are obviously seeing a wealth of much better, more and much better quality data that's available. And that really leads me to the next question, because I think, also one of the key factors that within the current system, but also with any future system, that is going to be a huge barrier for people is cost, right? And obviously, as these models scale, we're going to need to make sure that people are able to pay to be able to train in that way. And so I'd like to ask, firstly, Mr. Agrawal and also Professor, I'd like just to kind of touch with you. Are you, in your work, are you seeing any innovative models with the potential to scale around financing for students to be able to finance the cost of this education? One thing that I've seen, a company that we work with in Argentina has income agreements over a fixed term with people that go through coding courses and gain credentials in that space. So they commit over a certain period of time that a percentage of income will be paid back, so that they don't have to front the cost of doing the program. But I'm wondering what you're seeing here. I do think with the wealth of this data that we now have at our fingertips, there must be better ways of avoiding people emerging. I think in India it's something like 4 to 10 lakhs on average of student debt when they emerge from university. In the US, it could be, where I live, it's in the tens to hundreds of thousands. So there must be a better way of doing this. So I'm interested as to what you're seeing.
In fact, you rightly said, the cost is a barrier for education for many students, particularly those who are from poor background. So in Odisha, what we do, we provide financial support for acquiring such skills courses also, particularly for acquiring skills in emerging technologies. We have tie-up with Skill Development Department, where we provide free access to various learning platforms like Coursera, where the students are given free access for acquiring any skill, and whatever the cost is there, the state bears it. Similarly, there are various platforms like NASCOM has Springboard, and also the TCS GUI. Recently, they have also been empaneled for providing such skill courses, and the cost will be borne by the state. Apart from that, also for acquiring higher skills and better jobs, also state government has various scholarship programs also. Like for foreign studies, the state has recently introduced a scheme of financing students up to 50 lakh rupees also.
Yeah. No, that's great, thank you. And Professor, I'm just wary of the time, but quickly, any models that you're seeing with the ability to scale quickly?
No, I think most of the points have already been made. The important thing is how to motivate people to continuously learn. I think that is an important point. I mean, tools may be available, mechanisms are there, but unless the individual, the human being, is motivated to change. So I think that is a very important thing. I feel that how do we motivate people to continuously change? Because I was in fact head of the Teaching Learning Center at IIT Madras. And so I have access to a lot of research on learning. And one of the things the research notes is there is a natural resistance to change of people. So how do you overcome and motivate people to continuously change? That is a very important aspect. And it requires a certain amount of skill to introduce the way you introduce a topic, the way you design your pedagogy. Today, we have to design, we have to impart learning through activities rather than lectures. Those are some of the ways in which you can motivate people to change rather than just giving lectures. You have to design appropriate activities through which if people learn, then the learning will be deep. That's the thing I want to add. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. I think that draws our discussion together really nicely, that broader motivation to change. Yes, obviously there's much more that can be done with regards to credentials, the way that those are delivered, the tools that we have for that, and also the mechanisms for people to finance that part of it. But ultimately, that motivation to change needs to extend to students and needs to extend to the faculty that are delivering those courses. And then also, it needs to sit within an ecosystem whereby it's valued by the market, by employers, etc. So we have reached the end of our time. I thank you for joining me today, and we'll move on to the next panel. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. A wonderful session there with leaders from academia, government, policymakers as well. Again, you are getting all the insights right here at the Black Swan Summit, right here in Odisha, in India. So I hope you're all enjoying it. We have our final session just before lunch, and it's going to be a good one because we have talked about insurance a little bit this morning, and of course, it is only ever essential when you need it, otherwise mostly invisible, right? Insuretech is a crucial part of what we've been discussing. So please welcome our next moderator, Mr. Arjun Veer Singh, who will be talking to another panel of incredible industry.
I'm going to have the panelists sit down. We're going to try and make this a little bit more interactive. So I think what we'll try at the end of the session is possibly open it up for a few Q&A, if you guys are up for it. So take us upon the offer. I've got a great set of... you're going to swap names? Yeah. Amol, Harshad, Karthik, Vyasa, and Professor. We've got everybody right? Okay, excellent. So you can actually see the names behind us. What I'd suggest is, rather than we spend the next 10 minutes trying to introduce ourselves, which I think all of you are known luminaries, when you first answer the question which is posed, why don't you give a sort of brief introduction to yourself at that time, so we'll kick off, right? Does that work? Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for staying. I know we're between lunch and you. I promised lunch would be great, but I'll make sure that this conversation is a debate. I've been told that we've got to spark some debate and some controversy. So apologies in advance. I love this job because this is when I can be superbly dumb and ask the most obvious questions and not worry about it, which for a consultant is usually hard because we're paid to be intelligent, which most of us aren't. The topic is quite interesting. I'm going to start with Prof. U, right? And I'm going to start with something fairly emotive. I'm going to say, what is the definition of insanity, right? We've had, India's been independent for several decades. We've had a public and private sector insurance presence for decades. As I can remember, we used to have the man from the LIC or the woman from the LIC, which I was talking to Karthik early in the morning, was like the man from the Prudential. We have a woefully low penetration in terms of insurance, right? Why? What's the problem?
Yeah. It's me again, so I don't think there's the introduction required. So I think, first of all, it's the definition, right? 4% penetration. Most countries, including India, most emerging markets, tend to tackle two groups quite well. So the people who can afford it, right, the high net worth, and actually the bottom 20-30%, right, who are actually looked after by the government. So there's a lot of government incentives, a lot of government programs for that. The real gap is really the mass market in between. And I think that is what is dragging that penetration down. So I think that's where, they are not able to buy policies of a value that makes it viable for private insurers to deploy traditional models of agents knocking on their doors and reaching out to them. Right? So the cost to serve or cost to acquire is too high. So I think that's where the model is broken. Right? And I think that the issue is how do you actually solve some of this and actually tackle that group?
No, so, okay, well, I'm going to open this question up for everybody. Well, I guess I don't want to kill myself. We might need insurance. I am insured, thankfully. We run to technology very quickly, right? Whenever there's a problem with the operating model, or in this case, distribution or CAC or whatever it is, we say technology is going to solve. Isn't the problem a little bit more structural, a little bit more systemic, rather than just, oh, technology can solve it? Open to anyone.
Hi, Jai Hind, everybody. So, just commenting on this, I feel the real problem is not the distribution. The real problem is the trust factor. So that's where, the trust factor is missing. So we need to have something that can be built around the trust or a neutral trust layer that can help the penetration of insurance at rural levels as well, because I don't think so we are lacking at the onboarding level, but at the settlement level is where the problem is. So you have n number of apps, you have n number of agents for distribution, but having said that, I don't see a neutral settlement layer because the trust is there. So that's my opinion about, to add to the penetration.
Very good point. I'm going to come later to trust because I think there's an interesting angle in there too, which is human. But anyone else has a view? Is it trust? Is it access at an affordable price? Do we really make good products? Go for it.
Yeah, so I think one thing I'd like to hi, this is Karthik. I'm the co-founder of Symbo. When we say penetration, and because we would like to have a debate here, I don't think a lot of people really understand what that 3.7 or 4% penetration really means. It's not that only 4% of the country or 4% of the population has insurance, no. The definition of penetration is premium collected in the country upon the GDP.
Yeah, premium over GDP. Right.
But if you look at individuals insured, let's just look at health and life. There is no official statistics available. Estimates say that approximately 50% of the country is covered. 40 to 50% of the country is covered.
All right.
Either by government schemes or by private players or by employers giving insurance to their employees. So a bit misleading when we say it's 4% penetration, but a majority of the people are covered from that perspective. Now, yes, there is a debate that are they adequately covered or not. That is an open question. We do feel people are not adequately covered. Now, can technology solve this problem, to the question you posed? Of course, yes, because with technology, the cost of distribution goes down, affordability increases, which means more and more people can be in the insurance fold.
Okay. Vyasa, you want to say something? Please.
Most important is awareness. What happens, if you see from even for the students, during the entire student life, in any of the course curriculum, we never hear the word insurance. That is one of the major problems even for the highest educated person. When they say insurance, they immediately connect to, they say as LIC. Even if they are insuring their vehicle, they say LIC. That is what happens in India. So what is important? Word called insurance. Insurance works like this. So what is happening is the awareness is missing. So the most important is right from the school curriculum, unless we introduce this insurance as a chapter or as a lesson, it is very difficult to penetrate into the markets, those markets. That is one of the important things. Second one is the insurance companies. They are highly urban oriented. They are not going into the rural areas because they are in a position to get the required premiums or the business within the urban centers in India. So this is only off late after the liberalization, Tier 2, Tier 3 centers, the insurance is going now. So there is a lot of reasons for lack of penetration into the insurance market in India.
Excellent. Amol, last.
Yeah. My name is Amol Gupta, co-founder of Advance. So before I'll touch upon the point Mr. Krishna raised. The most important part of insurance adoption problem in India, and especially being an insuretech founder myself, not even understand what is written in the document which is been produced.
70, 80, I bet 99.
Probably 99. So we need a lawyer or attorney just to understand the policy doc. And then there are exceptions and exclusions. So when the policy insured is going to the claims assessor, there are exceptions and exclusions and they're telling, and then the claims settlement process is a hassle. So I agree to the point that there is a need of awareness, but it has to be done in a certain way that it doesn't, the users should not feel that it's a overburden for him. So one example could be, can we introduce like a gaming platform and bring insurance as a learning platform, like gaming and learning together? That could be one innovative idea that can be implemented.
No, I think it's great. Let's get to solving. I think we leave you builders to come up with all your billion-dollar ideas, and if you guys want some angel investors like us to come on board, give us a shout. But I think what you're actually saying to me is the underlying issue with trust, right? So many people are just not getting on the boat or bus because they believe that they will be gypped at the end of the process. Nobody will pay them, so their logic is, we're going to get cheated in any case. Why should I actually pay the cream? Let me move on to the second question, right? Otherwise, we'll never move on for the first one, right? This whole summit, GFT, and sort of gotten together with the government of Odisha. Odisha is supposed to be, or is being pitched to be the lab, right? I want to talk about decentralization, right? Regulation of financial services is typically very much a centralized, regulated play, right? So this notion of decentralization, okay, does it start to address some of these concerns? Can it actually help scale insurance penetration? Or eventually you will come to a point where you'll either hit a wall, right, as you try to scale, and or do we carry some risk of fragmentation within the whole sector? Vyasa, why don't you go first?
Financial regulation as such, it is highly centralized, whether it is Reserve Bank of India or IRDA and other things. But at the same time, there are a lot of provisions which help certain amount of decentralization or for the states or the individual insurance companies to operate within the centralized financial regulation. Suppose a state of Odisha, the state of Odisha is trying to design a policy for the requirements of the local. Definitely, there are provisions within the system where they can do these things. Because of late, the regulators also are allowing through various mechanisms like sandbox, or there are various other mechanisms where one can try, which is being encouraged by the regulators through certain products for particular geographical areas and for certain income groups. So these products are also available. So if one particular state wants to design their own product, their own policy for their own local requirements, it is being allowed. It is not seen that the central financial regulations are coming in the way. It is not like that, because within the federal system in India, these things are being operated successfully by many states. There are some, I will give you an example. PMFBY is a centralized program, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Certain states are not participating, still it is happening. Certain states have got their own agriculture insurance, which is different from the PMFBY, still it is being operated. So within the same financial regulation, these things are being possible in the country, and then this is being encouraged also. There is one company which has designed a policy exclusively for Uttarakhand for agriculture. Because Uttarakhand agriculture is different, because hilly region is there, plain lands are there. Hilly region, the fragmented lands, within 1 acre, they cultivate at least 4 or 5 crops. Every 20 cents or something, one crop they cultivate. for them as an exclusive policy, it has been designed. So there are so many ways within the central financial regulation, one can operate within within particular state or within a particular insurance company as a separate product and other things.
Yes, I'm going to be provocative, right? I had the fortune to work in several corners, and we can always find one or two good examples which sort of justify the bigger logic. I don't get. I'm going to come to you, Harshad. Sandboxes. I'm going to jump on. This is the favorite word on fintech events for the last 2 to 3 years, right? There's a lot of sandboxing happening, right? Sandboxing at a state level, I'm sure, are great for startups. Do they allow for scale-ups to be created?
Yes, certainly. See, if I have to put it across now, the sandboxes at the state level, I look at de-risking the entire thing. Now, when I say de-risking means de-risking for the national adoption or national scale. So, if states become the test labs, and why would a regulator stop them? I don't see regulators being, hitting the wall, because regulators need evidence. If states do their testings or states try to implement certain things, you come out with evidence, you submit the evidence, and that becomes national scale. But a role of a regulator generally is, they are the custodians of system stability. So they would not want a state to execute something which is not aligning to the national standards. So I would personally say that if a state like Odisha decides to do something, they should first align to the national standards, and they should start the test labs with aligning to the national standards, and the innovations should be in such a manner that is aligned to the national standards. So if you start doing this right at the beginning, I don't see any issues with this, or I don't see any regulator stopping you or you hitting the wall with the regulator, because they need evidence. See, you can't give presentations and say that, this is what I have done. So you need to be on the ground, and you need to test it on the ground and show it to the nation that, yes, this has been done, this is the evidence. Now go ahead with this.
So I'm going to go to the two builders here. Bureaucracy as a code, right? So we put bureaucracy right up front. Does it really work? Does the bureaucracy kill? Is this alignment between state-level sandboxes and a centralized regulator just very good at conversations like these and panels? How do you guys experience it?
So, I mean, if you look at the...
I'm sorry if I'm getting you into trouble right now. I'm sure there's some regulators sitting there.
No, I'll be politically correct and factually correct. So if you look at what IRDA has been doing recently, right, they are opening up, right? There is talk of allowing MGAs, there is talk of allowing micro-insurers, and new licenses are being given out. So from an intent point of view, they have a very, very tough job of balancing customer protection and also fostering innovation. So I personally am super excited about the steps IRDA has been taking to let individual entities come up with innovative products. Just one quick stat, right? We talk about penetration in India being like 3.7%, whereas we compare it with US where it's 9%. India has less than 100 insurance companies. US has 6,000. So there has to be a time where it has to get decentralized for penetration to increase. It's just a matter of time. And IRDA is moving in that direction.
Okay, America is a very different example. You also have 20,000 banks because the states work at a certain level of autonomy. Amol, same question to you.
Yeah, I feel sandbox are important just to ideate, but as long as the policymakers, the decision makers, the regulators understand what is being developed as part of the product innovation, I don't think so it can scale, honestly speaking. Being an insuretech player myself, I understand that it needs a lot of capital, it needs a lot of mentorship, and also if policymakers or the regulator doesn't understand the compliance of it, then it's a no-go, basically. That's what I feel.
Okay, let's skip. Karthik, I'm going to come to you first, right? We were talking over breakfast this morning. You do embedded insurance. Awesome, right? Premiums can be as low as, I guess, 50 rupees, right? Is this just a good on paper type business where you can build scale and get great valuation? Or do you really think you're solving a real problem, right? And is this actually, in the long term, something that could be profitable and remunerative?
Sure. So if you look at typically how traditional insurance has been sold, insurers have relied on brokers and corporate agents to really go out there and sell these essential insurance products. Now, they are high value, high cost, and which is why even the intermediaries are incentivized to go out and sell. But let's say I'm buying a phone and I drop the phone. If I want to secure my phone, nobody's coming and selling me phone insurance as of today. And that is where embedded insurance comes into play, where at the point of sale, how can you bring an extremely relevant, contextual, low-ticket insurance product that makes sense during the journey, during the product purchase. We all have experience when you book a flight ticket, you see the travel insurance options. It is so simple. It's just a yes or no decision. That is the use case where embedded insurance works beautifully well. And that is why the customer paying a 50 or 100 rupee also doesn't mind, because he knows he's securing that particular transaction. Now to your question, is it real and is it real helping the customers? At Symbo, we have definitely seen a lot of customers benefit from it, and we see a lot of customers also adopt it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so, yes, Professor, I'm going to come with something a little bit more provocative, right? 50 rupee insurance attached to a sneaker. Is that true financial inclusion? Are we creating a safety net for a country which needs one?
50 rupees insurance. You see the micro insurance. Entire micro insurance sector is low premiums. And it is for the low income groups. It is the requirement for India. Low income families are so many. You see, not just below the poverty line, but low income groups. Even middle income groups also, they consider themselves most of the times as low income groups. For them, micro insurance is one of the major requirements for the market. So from that point of view, micro insurance, and if you see the other markets, there are micro insurance companies that have come up. Because I worked for 20 years as CEO in Africa in insurance. And I am seeing micro insurance companies that have come up in the African markets. So they are there. So that is what is required. It is not just for the industry sectors. There are so many other things. If you see, for example, in India itself, around 1976-77, Janata policy has come up in the market for 12 rupees. With a coverage, personal accident coverage of 15,000 rupees, risk cover. The type of policies, even within the government sector, when the PSUs were there, public sector companies were operating only as a monopoly within India. Those policies have been designed. Then livestock policies have come. These are all low-income policies. Then fisheries policies. Then there are so many other policies for piggery insurance. There are so many policies for rural sector. Then they called as rural insurances. Entire rural insurance market is low income market, micro insurance market. The premium rates are so low. And at some point of time, even 5 rupees if Janata policy was issued.
Prof, what do you have to say? Because I have a counter on that, because in a way I'm going to argue the point that there is a bit of contradiction in this question and the first one, which is around awareness and actually having. So we have all these insurances, all these micro insurances, we have an unaware market. So what's the point? But sorry, first go for yourself.
So I think there's a range of what micro insurance covers. I think where is protection for loss of income, protection for accidents. I think those are good avenues for people to buy, right? So an accident can create a loss of income, right? And that's devastating to some families.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to get that out there, right? With the extreme where it says, you buy micro insurance to cover your delivery of your sneakers, or even, within the e-commerce ecosystem, I think that's designed for a different thing. Right, that's not financial inclusion. That's to retain trust in an e-commerce platform, right? And that helps, to generate the economy that way. So I think you need to look at the purpose of the micro insurance, right? Is it almost like, the extreme end was we used to bundle insurance, make insurance very complex, and therefore that makes it unaffordable, and that also makes it, frankly, from an agent side, relatively hard to sell, right? So I think those are just the evolution that we're seeing. But if you really look at the gap, like I said, right, is a lot of the micro insurance is driven by government, right? Even LIC did it well because it was state-owned, right? But a foreign insurer coming in here, right, wouldn't really look at micro insurance as the area to go into, right? Particularly for life insurance, critical illness, and so on and so forth. So there is a state agenda behind some of this, but the people at the next level, which is the mass market, right, where they are not push insurance by the state, are actually less aware that there are such things, right? And today, a lot of them will fall into the gig economy, the micro SMEs, and so on and so forth. And you need to figure a way to reach them, right, and make them aware of this.
Samuel, I'm going to come to you, right? Is microinsurance a good thing? I don't think anybody will disagree. Does it solve a problem? Yes, it does. What I do hear, and you can correct me, is that a lot of people, at least in the private sector, worry that they'll actually make enough money out of microinsurance. One of the fingers they tend to point is the tech at the back end is too expensive to be able to sort of do this. I guess I'm not going to use the word at scale, because at scale it might actually become profitable, but while you're scaling. As someone who's actually in tech, is solving this problem, where do you see a problem in terms of making money in microinsurance? Where is tech helping?
I think if you talk about US or Europe market, micro insurance is pretty evident there. Like if you buy a flight ticket, you will get your travel health covered with that. That's an example. In India also, if you book IRCT train ticket, you get your travel covered as well. So it's like 12 rupees, 18 rupees, 14 rupees based on the ticket size. In India, I think there is a need of micro products first, then only micro insurance will come up. So you need to have, let's suppose for example, cyber. Okay, so there are so many startups coming up. They are not aware of cyber liability. So can we create a product having revenue of, let's suppose, 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs per annum at this point, and give them cyber insurance? Is there a product? Probably no. So I think the problem in India is to have those products at a micro insurance level so that the adoption can happen and then it can increase the penetration. Tech can only be the enabler here. I don't think so. With fancy techs, you can do a lot of stuff, but the policymakers or the actuaries, the underwriters, probably they should come up with these micro insurance products. That's what I feel.
Harshit, Karthik, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, sure. So if you look from an insurer's perspective, is micro insurance profitable? That's the question, right? There are three aspects to consider. Number one, is the book profitable or not? Now, because micro insurance or the embedded insurance is being distributed with another product, nobody's coming and buying an insurance product individually, which means the risk gets distributed over a very, very large audience. So from an underwriting point of view, embedded insurance or micro insurance does turn out to be very profitable. Second, because it's being distributed with large-scale consumer platforms, the entire agent, broker, commission, which insurers typically have to fork out, that's also reduced very, very drastically. So then comes the third point of, okay, with the small ticket size, how can I leverage tech to distribute this at a large scale? Now, that is where most insurers, unfortunately, have not been ready. But now, given that they've seen this model work out, we see a lot of insurers proactively investing in tech and, in fact, putting up dedicated teams just to facilitate this. And they work extremely closely with companies like us and kind of outsource the tech to us so that it still remains profitable. So,
do you have a point of view on this before we get to trust? Because I've got my...
At ShovelTech, we work on the claims side. So, and we work on ground. So, I happen to, have the similar discussion with one of the large insurer, a friend of mine working there. And I asked the similar question that, when we book tickets, we don't even see that whether I have checked that or not checked that checkbox. Do you want this insurance or not? So it really doesn't matter. As a As a consumer, I don't even see that. Even if I check it, it's okay for me. Even if I don't check it, it is okay for me. So the question directly to the insurer was then why do you have such products? So it is a complete profitable product. It's a money-making product. Why? Because I asked simple questions from the claim side that how many claims did you receive for a micro insurance? When I checked on IRCTC, I booked a ticket, I said I need this insurance. How many claims did you get in the last financial year for a micro insurance product? It's absolutely zero. So it's a total profit to the insurance company, which is absolutely fine. We are not saying that insurance companies should not make money. They should make money. In fact, they should make good money. But if you ask me that question, that micro insurance, does it solve the problem? I would say it's just a money-making product. That's the take. I would take that it's a money-making product.
So I think not for today. We're not going to have time. I think there's a very interesting debate to be had, which is sort of splitting micro-insurance to some of the embedded lifestyle e-commerce driven products. I think we shouldn't muddle the two. Yes, there is a crossover in the sense of the size, the scale, and some of the dynamics, but I think the problems they tend to solve should be different. Also, what's very interesting is, just to make this matter more complicated, as parametric insurance comes in, where things actually get automated, we're seeing this movement around tokenization coming in, right? So we can fractionalize policies, so therefore they can arguably become more affordable, so on and so forth. I do think that this microinsurance will take its own little thing. I'll come back to trust. That's the question I wanted to really talk to you, right? So you build last mile solutions. Obviously, you're focused on claims, right? Let me give you a situation. Let's take rural Odisha for example, right? Who really owns the relationship? Is it the app? Is it the agent facilitating the app? And I'll give you a very interesting example. I spent a lot of my time in the Middle East, very big remittance market, right? So, the remittance companies actually have agents who go to these camps where people live, and they actually help them open up their apps and take them through the whole journey, right? Which happens in India too. And actually the relationship is very much the agents, it's not the app. How does it play out here?
See, if you talk about rural Odisha, definitely it's the human angle. So, they will believe on a human being rather than an app. But having said that, they trust, that doesn't mean that they distrust technology. They distrust
Let's turn to the big news here, where a major revelation has been made in the Ghaziabad triple suicide case. The three sisters were influenced by the Korean
the problem is not at the onboarding level. The problem is at the settlement level. If you can build that trust, if you can bring in something that gets the trust back, it's not the question of an app or a human being or anything. You have to build that system correct. If the system, if that layer is correct and you develop that trust,
currently on your TV screen are from
as an individual, I see that people are getting their claims settled. He's getting money, and he's getting the money fast. That is more important. Right now in India, money receiving is very fast. I don't have to talk about it. Everybody knows it. Why receiving money is fast. So if claim settlement can be fast, the trust layer the trust actually comes up there. So you don't have to go and sell insurance. If the trust layer is taken care of, the settlement is taken care of, then it doesn't matter whether it is a human or an app.
I think there is an elephant which we might not address, which is the underlying ethos around claims, right? It's not the speed of payment, it's with the intent sometimes, which doesn't sit in the right place. Prof, I'm going to come to you. Let's take a little bit of a global perspective, right? India is on a journey. There are other countries as big as ours. Well, there's only one which is as big as ours, but there are other countries which are big enough who've kind of gone through this journey. How have you seen the transition? How have you seen the evolution for people moving from human-based to this sort of hybrid model to fully adopting sort of, the app, as I might use that term?
So I think we were starting to design customer-centric models, right? So trust is one thing. Trust is always breached at a point of claim, right? And you look at what China has done with Ping An and all, Zhong'an and all, they are breaking records, right? They are built on blockchain. claim settlements actually can happen in as short as 10 seconds, right, in many cases. So I think the way they address this is, we know there's an issue, we know there's a trust issue, right? And for me to actually get my customer to buy microinsurance repeatedly, the minute you build that trust, you lose that customer, right? And everybody knows everybody in the market, in the ecosystem. So they pay a lot of attention to claim settlement, right? And I think when there's 0 claims, I question, right? I think it's because most people don't even know they were insured because of the embedded style, right? And that's why they didn't know that when an event happened, they can claim. And that's really deluding the customer, right? And I think regulators look out for those market conducts. So a regulator that will actually inspect an insurance company and sees 0 claim in a product, I'm sure questions will be raised. So I think those are the roles that regulators will play to raise trust as well.
Well, take a tech perspective, right? I'm just going to ask you the obvious question. Take where India is in its maturity curve, right? I think, and specifically when I take, non-urban India, right, which is huge in terms of numbers and sort of just pure size. Are we wasting too much time, too much money, too much resources building digital interfaces versus, if I may use the term, let's call it tech-enabled humans, right? Should there be, is there a disproportionate amount of money and resources going in the former versus the latter?
I believe if I'll talk about brokers, right? So there are like a couple of products only most of the brokers use. So if you look at those products also, they are like 20 years, probably 10 years back they were built. So if you want to integrate the new tech solution into that, it's very hard to do. So obviously there is a technological revolution that needs to happen in insurance ecosystem, that is for sure, and tech could be an enabler to it. But the question around whether the adoption will happen or not, you have to look at the age, the decision makers who are actually, giving go ahead and implement this tech, whether it's a blockchain, whether it's an AI, whether it's an RPA, whatever you want to call it. Those decision makers are skeptical because of a lot of things, but mostly around the regulations, compliance, and there is a DPDP Act also coming. So you have to make sure that PII data is all encrypted, it's protected, there is a consent which is being asked to the end users. So all that is there. So in philosophy, there is a need of obviously technology revolution, but it has to be driven by the policymakers. And unfortunately, I should not say this, but at this level, that is very slow. I don't know whether the other members will agree or not, but if you'll compare it to other markets, it's very slow.
But so if you take the value chain, if I take Harshad's point out here, are we spending too much upfront trying to make people more productive and to sell more when we're actually not addressing the underlying problem, which is where the claim side happens, right? Possibly even in product engineering. So are we all just trying to say, oh, can I make my sales force that much more productive? Is that where the money is going, or are we I don't know, are we balancing the spend?
No, so having worked with insurance companies, I think all of the spending is reactive spending when it comes to tech. I don't think they think of, say, okay, what can I do new or innovative to either increase distribution or to help with claims. The reason BFSI is in the end is also because the innovation quotient within the insurance ecosystem, unfortunately, has been very low, and even the tech spending. So I don't think, at least personally, that money is being spent on the point that you mentioned.
Okay, let's talk about innovation for a second. Thank you for sort of, I think you're very good at sort of giving me the words where I can sort of pick off, right? So innovation, Prof, I'll start with you. Yes, but anyone can dive in, right? Innovation, in my sort of humble, slightly aged view, needs a few failures, right? Unfortunately, failures could lead to riots and crisis, right, in the world of insurance. How do you sort of balance this rapid innovation, fast failing mindset, which is what's, taking us over? And, I have a parallel conversation where people are going crazy on agentic payments, right? I think it's a disaster waiting to happen, right? I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it. So, innovation, failure versus crisis? How do you balance the two?
I think you have to have, I mean, that's where sandboxes all come in, right? You have to have measured innovation, right? You don't innovate and charge out there and launch things without having your parameters checked, right? So there is a process. And then, interesting, Singapore with MES, they actually were in the industry to come up with a project called MindForge, which actually looks at governance and risk management in Gen AI, right, as an industry standard. So innovation can be done within the parameters of supervision, right? So you are not saying that, well, because there's Gen AI, there's a Gen Tech, all the new things are coming in, let's deploy that and rush out, right? So there is innovation in a regulated industry that needs to be balanced.
What works in a sandbox does not always work in the real world, right? Because, and especially in a country like India, right? You got, billions of people and millions of businesses, right? Where do you draw the line? And Vyasa, let me come to you. Where do you draw the line on saying we're becoming too innovative, slow down, right? This needs to be drip fed because we have to trust, we have to make people aware, so on and so forth.
In insurance, of late, the trend is unless we innovate, we perish. Unless we innovate, we perish.
Okay.
So, insurance companies tend to use sandbox model. Though in India, in IRDA, we have use and file policies, still they would like to use the sandbox model because sandbox will allow us to bring down to certain extent the capital norms for certain products and certain liberalized regulatory conditions. So the product is innovated through a sandbox model. From there, it can be scaled up. That is how it is happening.
Let me question, right? How many insurance companies which have been around here for 100 years are A, genuinely innovating, B, they have the mindset to innovate, 3, the burning platform to innovate, 4, the talent to innovate, 5, the appetite to work with startups to innovate? Is it truly, are they innovating? Harsh, go for it.
Sir, the market is changing. So unless, I mentioned to you, unless I innovate, I perish. So whether it is 100-year-old company...
But who's perishing? Tell me, look at the banking world. The biggest banks are still the ones which were there 50 years ago. Nobody's perished. Actually, the perished are the ones who try to innovate and out-innovate it themselves. Insurance companies, how much has the landscape really changed? Go on, Harsha, tell me I'm wrong.
Arjun, what sir said, I agree with it, that if you don't innovate, you may perish. But innovation needs standards. You just can't go and keep innovating. You need a standard, systemic way to innovate. So let me take this discussion to a very important regulatory intent. What is happening right now is we have the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, under which you have the National Health Claims Exchange. I'll keep drifting to the claims because we work in claims. But what I want to tell the crowd over here is there is regulatory intent to standardize things. Right now what's happening is the insurers or maybe the hospitals or any other healthcare provider, they're working in silos. They are innovating in silos. But they are not talking to each other.
Fair.
Yeah, so they are not talking to each other. So if I have to put it in very simple words, so a hospital is talking Tamil language, insurer is talking Marathi or maybe Hindi, and they both cannot communicate to each other. They have done fabulous innovation, product innovation, they have fabulous products, very innovative products, but when it comes at that intersection of claims, what happens is if I am a patient and I'm in the hospital right now, and as Amol pointed out, that people don't read the policies, okay? So my policy says the right thing, but when I go there, my needs are not fulfilled by those policies, and I'm a dissatisfied customer. But neither the insurance company is wrong, neither the hospital is wrong. it is just the interpretation of the patient that goes as a, the insurance company becomes a bad insurance company. Now to avoid this, there are certain standards that are coming in place. They are using fast healthcare interoperability resource as a HL7 standard, where everybody comes on one single platform and they can communicate the same language, in the same language. Plus, you get, you become, the system becomes a little predictive. So it helps the insurers as well to underwrite better policies. So there is regulatory intent, there is national intent. Now, if we do this systematically, definitely there will be a change. I'm not saying the change will happen immediately, but yes, if you try to build these systems, innovate around the standards, definitely you will have the change in the next coming few months.
I've got quick questions, because I'm running out of time, quick questions to you two founders. Are large insurance companies, and I'm not suggesting the regulator, are the large insurance companies working with the startup scene as much as they should in terms of their innovation agenda? It's a simple yes or no question, and you can qualify that.
For getting more business, yes. For everything else, no.
I don't think so at the level that is needed.
Yeah, and that's my underlying issue. I don't think this is about the regulator, nor am I saying that we should create the Wild West. But I do think that, and this is a problem we have in the banking sector, we have in the wealth management sector. I think this is an endemic issue to the financial services sector, where the collaboration between the incumbents and the new guys doesn't exist. Last question to all of you, right? If Odisha wants to emerge as a hub for insuretech in the next decade, right? What is the one thing that they must do? I'll start with you, Amol.
So we are probably the example of that. So we started, so our office in Bhubaneswar only. So we operate in multiple countries, but the head office is Bhubaneswar. So we have started back in 2021, and we have been running insuretech pretty largely, though our first clients were all US insurance carriers, because at this point, even if you go to any insurance company in India, they'll be like, who are you guys? So they don't trust startups. That's the reality. But yes, we are building ecosystem. We have around 100+ folks now. Obviously, the talent that is needed is not there, so we have to curate our own training program so that we can make them industry fit. And probably GFTN is already doing it, so maybe they are doing that part that we are doing before we even onboard them. That's a good plus, I would see, as part of this whole initiative. Yeah.
Just one statement. Execution grade claims digital public infrastructure. If Odisha is able to put that in place, a neutral execution layer, I think Odisha will succeed.
Karthik? I think talent, insuretech talent overall is not readily available. So and there is a brewing ecosystem now, so if they can take the lead and create talent, innovation and growth will automatically happen.
Yes, sir.
Sir, unless the reinsurance grows in India, the insurance sector still has got its own issues. The reinsurance is sufficient reinsurance, number of reinsurance companies are not there, or the acceptance levels of reinsurance companies are still limited. So
Fair
that
enough.
is one of the factors why insurance companies...
So Odisha should do more in terms of attracting reinsurers? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, so that is what I do.
Prof, wisdoms.
I think it's getting the ecosystem to work together, right? So we can say there's not enough insuretech talent, but I think there's not enough insurance talent as a whole, right? So, and I will start from the top, the regulators, right? So from regulators right down to emerging, students coming up. There's a need to build awareness even through supply chain. So large companies ensuring that their small suppliers are properly insured. So supply chain resilience is there. We want to make sure that platforms, right, wherever there's a large gig economy platform, they are also made aware, right? So I think if you work as an industry to say, let's raise awareness, let's raise capabilities, right? And in some cases, let's raise insurance capacity, whether through bringing insurers, reinsurers here, right? These are all things that you need to work collectively to make this really a living lab, right, as a state.
Excellent. Professor's a better consultant than I am. He slipped in the word ecosystem, right, before I could. Well done. I'm going to open up. We've got a couple of minutes. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. If not, that's even fine. Any questions from the people listening in? There we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikhil. Yes, so I had a question. In the previous question before this one, it was discussed and it was concluded that there's an important need for the big players and the smaller players to inculcate together. So how can that be done? Is there any pointers any one of you has based on that can be done in specific case of Odisha, and Odisha can be taken as a case study to be replicated across the nation?
Who would like to field the answer? How can the you meant how can the incumbents and the startups work together, correct?
Yes, sir.
Anyone like to take the question?
I think India Insurtech Association is a forum which is like a 800-member community. So there you can showcase your innovation. So platforms like events like that, like which happens once a year. But if that can be done more often, and we can curate those events in such a way that insurance company needs, like what we are trying to innovate as part of the product or whatever we are trying to build, that has to be sent to all the insurance companies that this is what we are innovating. Here is what the value proposition is. Would you be interested in coming and joining the event? And all the startup ecosystem who are trying to invent, who are trying to innovate, they can go there, showcase their business value products. And that could be one of the options.
Great. Any other questions? Sorry, please.
Yeah, hello. So I have a question regarding tech. So like we were discussing that whether the people trust the app or the other person. So like with growing technology, AI and everything, can we, build something where, instead of checking my phone and clicking buttons, I'm directly calling a number and a generative AI is talking and it is giving a human level, feeling, and I think it will bring more trust and, technology can help in bringing that. So is it possible by using the technology?
Who wants to take that?
Yeah, so there is a lot of work happening in that space where conversational bots are getting smarter, human-like, they understand nuances and are able to actually reply back like a human being. A lot of work is happening in that direction. So it's only a matter of time before these solutions become real. And that will also lead to a point where the customer might not feel valued enough because he's at the end of the day talking to a machine. So we'll have to solve for that problem at that point in time. But yes, it is on its way. It's a matter of maybe a couple of years before it becomes mainstream.
Gentlemen, thank you. Apologies if I was a bit pushy. That was intentional. But it was a pleasure to have you all. Thank you all for listening in. Please give them all a round of hand.
Thank you once again. What a great way to end the morning. Thank you, Arjun, and thank you to our leaders in academia, in policy, in government. Thank you all, gentlemen. And now, of course, I have the unenviable position of announcing lunch. We have a great networking lunch. Go out there, check out the exhibitions on the first floor, and visit each of the stalls. And of course, we've got a great day in store as well, because we've also got the showcase stage, which will be starting its conversations at 1:25 p.m., so just about 10 minutes from now, so be quick and go catch that. And of course, we'll have some great sessions this afternoon as well. We'll be putting the spotlight again onto Odisha, right here where we are. We've got a lot of conversations around benchmarking the SME ecosystem here in India and in this region. So stay with us for the afternoon. We will end the day with a networking dinner. So stay throughout the day. This is just day one. We have day two tomorrow, which is going to be extraordinary because we will have the immense privilege of having the President of India, of course, address us in a keynote speech. So thank you all. I will see you all back here in this room at 1:35 p.m. Enjoy lunch.